Have you ever wondered why the moment you stop chasing someone, they suddenly begin chasing you? Why the people who answer every message instantly are often taken for granted, while the ones who remain distant become unforgettable? It seems irrational. It seems unfair. Yet this is one of the oldest psychological patterns in human nature. People rarely value what is always available. They become obsessed with what feels just beyond their reach. The more desperately you seek attention, approval, or affection, the more invisible you become. But the moment you withdraw your need, your silence begins to speak louder than 1,000 words. This isn't about playing childish games. It's about understanding a timeless truth. Desire grows in uncertainty. Value increases with scarcity. Power belongs to those who can walk away. In today's speech, you'll discover why people instinctively chase those who ignore them, the hidden psychology behind attraction and respect, the dangerous mistakes that make people lose their value, and how mastering your own emotions can completely change the way others see you. Because the greatest power isn't making someone notice you. It's becoming someone they can't stop thinking about. From the earliest days of human history, people have been drawn toward what appears rare, difficult to obtain, or limited in availability. This tendency is deeply rooted in human psychology. When something is easily accessible, the mind unconsciously assumes it has less value. But when access becomes uncertain or restricted, attention immediately increases. This is not simply about romance or relationships. It influences nearly every decision people make, from the products they buy to the friendships they pursue and the opportunities they desire. Imagine walking into a store filled with hundreds of identical items. Most people barely stop to think before making a choice. Now imagine seeing a sign that says only 2 left. Suddenly the item feels more valuable, even if nothing about its quality has changed. The object itself is the same, yet the perception surrounding it has completely transformed. Scarcity creates urgency because the human brain is naturally afraid of losing opportunities. The same principle quietly governs social interactions. When someone constantly seeks attention, always makes themselves available, and never establishes boundaries, their presence becomes predictable. Predictability removes mystery, and without mystery, curiosity begins to fade. People stop appreciating what they can have whenever they want because certainty reduces emotional excitement. This doesn't mean people consciously decide to ignore those who are available. Most of the time, it happens beneath awareness. The human mind is attracted to puzzles. It wants to solve uncertainty. Whenever something is partially hidden or difficult to understand, the brain invests more energy trying to figure it out. That is why unanswered questions stay in our minds longer than answered ones. The unknown demands attention in ways that complete certainty never can. Scarcity also activates another powerful emotion, fear of missing out. Nobody likes the feeling that someone else might gain access to something valuable while they are left behind. This fear pushes people to act more quickly, think more intensely, and pay closer attention. In relationships, friendships, and even professional environments, people often begin valuing someone's time only after realizing it is no longer freely available. Think about individuals who constantly interrupt their own priorities to satisfy everyone around them. They answer every message immediately, cancel personal plans without hesitation, and rarely say no. At first, others may appreciate their kindness. Over time, however, that constant availability becomes expected instead of respected. What was once viewed as generosity slowly turns into an assumption. Appreciation disappears because there is no possibility of loss. Now compare that with someone who values their own time. They are respectful but not endlessly available. They focus on their goals, protect their schedule, and choose carefully where to invest their attention. Their absence is noticed because it has meaning. People begin wondering what occupies their time, what priorities they hold, and why they cannot always be reached. Curiosity naturally replaces certainty. This principle explains why exclusive clubs, luxury brands, limited editions, and invitation-only events often generate enormous interest. Their success is not based solely on quality but also on controlled access. People associate rarity with importance because the brain often uses availability as a shortcut for determining value. If something is difficult to obtain, it must be worth having. While this assumption is not always accurate, it influences behavior every day. Scarcity should never be confused with manipulation. Pretending to be unavailable simply to gain attention often backfires because authenticity is eventually revealed. Genuine scarcity comes from having a meaningful life that does not revolve around seeking validation from others. People who are deeply invested in personal growth, meaningful work, strong principles, and clear goals naturally become less available because their lives are already full of purpose. When someone builds a life centered on purpose instead of approval, they stop measuring their worth by how quickly others respond or how much attention they receive. Ironically, this quiet confidence often makes them far more interesting. Others begin noticing the independence they once overlooked, not because attention was demanded, but because value became evident through actions rather than constant availability. One of the fastest ways to lose influence, respect, and attraction is to become emotionally dependent on another person's attention. Neediness is not about caring deeply for someone. It is about placing your emotional stability in their hands. The moment your happiness depends on how quickly they reply, how often they call, or how much validation they give you, you surrender your sense of control. People can often sense this dependence long before it is ever spoken aloud. Human beings are naturally drawn to confidence, and confidence grows from self-sufficiency. When someone appears comfortable with themselves, they project strength without needing to announce it. On the other hand, constant reassurance, endless seeking of approval, and the fear of being ignored communicate insecurity. Even if the words sound kind and affectionate, the emotional energy behind them feels heavy. Others begin to feel responsible for maintaining that person's emotional state, and responsibility without choice often creates distance. Neediness usually begins with fear. It may be the fear of rejection, abandonment, loneliness, or not feeling good enough. Instead of building inner confidence, people try to solve these fears by gaining more attention from others. For a brief moment, receiving affection feels comforting. A message, a compliment, or a phone call provides temporary relief. But because the confidence comes from outside instead of within, it quickly disappears, creating an endless cycle of seeking more validation. This cycle can become exhausting for everyone involved. The more attention a needy person receives, the more they begin to expect it. Small delays suddenly feel like signs of rejection. Ordinary silence becomes a reason for anxiety. Every interaction is analyzed for hidden meanings. Instead of enjoying the relationship, the mind becomes trapped in constant emotional monitoring. Ironically, the behaviors meant to bring people closer often push them away. Repeated texting, demanding reassurance, becoming upset over delayed responses, or constantly asking whether someone still cares creates pressure. Healthy relationships grow through freedom, not obligation. When people feel forced to provide endless emotional reassurance, they begin protecting their own space. Consider two individuals entering the same room. One spends every conversation trying to impress everyone. They agree with every opinion, laugh at every joke, seek constant approval, and change their personality depending on who they are talking to. The other listens carefully, speaks with calm confidence, expresses honest opinions, and remains comfortable whether others agree or not. Most people naturally respect the second individual because authenticity signals emotional security. Neediness also affects personal decision-making. Someone desperate for acceptance often sacrifices their own values just to avoid conflict. They ignore disrespect, tolerate unhealthy behavior, cancel important commitments, and repeatedly put someone else's priorities ahead of their own. They believe these sacrifices will earn love and appreciation. Instead, they often lose respect because they communicate that their own needs have little importance. People tend to respect those who respect themselves. Self-respect is reflected through boundaries, standards, and the willingness to walk away from situations that consistently undermine personal dignity. This does not come from arrogance or pride. It comes from understanding that personal value should never depend entirely on another person's opinion. Emotionally independent people still care deeply about others. They still form meaningful friendships and loving relationships. The difference is that their identity remains intact regardless of external validation. They enjoy connection without becoming consumed by it. They appreciate affection without requiring constant proof of it. Their confidence remains steady because it is built upon character rather than attention. Neediness often disguises itself as love, loyalty, or dedication, but genuine love allows both people to breathe. It encourages growth instead of control. It creates trust instead of constant suspicion. It respects individuality rather than demanding continuous reassurance. When emotional independence exists, relationships become healthier because both individuals choose to remain together instead of feeling emotionally trapped. The strongest presence in any relationship is rarely the loudest or the most demanding. It is usually the person who maintains inner peace regardless of changing circumstances. Their calmness comes from knowing that their worth is not determined by another person's approval. They invest in their goals, develop their skills, maintain meaningful friendships, and continue growing whether attention comes easily or not. This quiet confidence becomes naturally attractive because it reflects stability, maturity, and genuine self-belief rather than emotional dependence. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, avoidance, or a lack of confidence. In reality, silence can be one of the most powerful forms of communication. While words reveal intentions, silence creates questions. The human mind is naturally uncomfortable with unanswered questions, which is why silence has the ability to capture attention in ways that constant talking never can. People often remember what was left unsaid more than what was explained in great detail. Most people feel an overwhelming urge to fill every moment of silence. They rush to explain themselves, defend their actions, justify their decisions, and seek immediate understanding from others. This habit usually comes from a fear of being misunderstood or rejected. However, excessive explanation often weakens a person's position. The more someone tries to convince others of their value, the more it appears they are seeking permission to be respected. Curiosity is born from uncertainty. When every thought, emotion, and plan is constantly shared, there is little left for others to discover. Predictability removes excitement because the mind no longer needs to imagine or explore. On the other hand, people who reveal themselves gradually naturally become more interesting. They allow conversations to unfold over time instead of trying to tell their entire story in a single interaction. Think about a book that reveals every twist on the first page. There would be no reason to continue reading because the mystery has disappeared. Human relationships often work in a similar way. The unknown stimulates attention. It encourages observation, imagination, and emotional investment. People become curious about individuals who cannot be fully understood within a few minutes of conversation. Silence also demonstrates emotional control. During disagreements, many people react instantly. They raise their voices, send emotional messages, or speak without thinking. In those moments, emotions control their behavior instead of wisdom. A calm pause communicates something very different. It shows that a person is capable of thinking before reacting. That level of self-control often commands far more respect than winning an argument through louder words. There is a significant difference between silent confidence and silent resentment. Silent confidence comes from emotional stability. It does not seek revenge or manipulation. It simply recognizes that not every situation deserves an immediate response. Sometimes saying nothing protects dignity far more effectively than endless explanations. A person who can remain composed while others lose control demonstrates inner strength that cannot easily be shaken. Silence becomes especially powerful after disappointment or rejection. Many people respond by repeatedly asking for explanations, demanding closure, or trying to change another person's mind. These reactions usually come from emotional pain, but they rarely produce the desired outcome. Instead, they often reduce personal dignity because they communicate desperation rather than confidence. Choosing silence in these moments allows emotions to settle while preserving self-respect. People are naturally intrigued by emotional restraint because it leaves room for imagination. When someone disappears from constant conversation without hostility or drama, others often begin wondering what happened. Questions replace assumptions. Curiosity replaces certainty. The mind begins filling the empty space with possibilities, and this mental process keeps attention focused far longer than repeated attempts to force communication. Social media has made this principle even more obvious. Many individuals feel pressure to share every achievement, every emotion, every opinion, and every moment of their lives. Constant visibility may attract temporary attention, but it often reduces mystery. Someone who quietly works toward meaningful goals without announcing every step creates a different impression. Their results eventually speak louder than endless updates, making their success feel more authentic and impressive. Silence is equally important in conversations. Confident people do not feel the need to dominate every discussion. They listen carefully, observe body language, and choose their words with intention. This makes their contributions more meaningful because they speak when they have something valuable to add, rather than speaking simply to avoid quiet moments. Good listeners often gain more influence than constant talkers because people feel understood in their presence. Silence can also expose truth. When someone lies, manipulates, or seeks conflict, they often expect an emotional reaction. Responding immediately gives them exactly what they anticipated. Remaining calm forces them to confront the absence of the reaction they hope to provoke. Without resistance, many manipulative behaviors lose their power because they depend on emotional engagement to continue. Choosing silence does not mean avoiding communication forever. Healthy relationships require honesty, openness, and meaningful conversations. The power lies in knowing when words are necessary and when restraint is wiser. Speaking with intention instead of impulse gives every word greater weight. A person whose silence reflects confidence, patience, and emotional discipline often leaves a stronger impression than someone who constantly speaks in search of attention, approval, or recognition. Emotional independence is one of the rarest qualities a person can develop because it requires strength that cannot be borrowed from anyone else. It is the ability to remain calm, confident, and focused regardless of whether others offer praise, criticism, attention, or rejection. This kind of stability commands respect because it demonstrates that your emotions are guided by your principles rather than controlled by other people's behavior. Those who possess emotional independence are not immune to disappointment, but they refuse to let disappointment define their identity or dictate their decisions. Many people unknowingly hand over control of their emotional lives to others. Their mood changes based on a text message, a compliment, a social media notification, or someone else's opinion. When they receive attention, they feel confident. When attention disappears, so does their self-worth. This constant dependence creates emotional instability because external validation is unpredictable. No person can provide endless reassurance, and no relationship can survive if one individual becomes responsible for carrying the emotional weight of the other. True confidence is built differently. It comes from knowing who you are before anyone else tells you. It grows through discipline, personal achievement, consistent values, and self-respect. A person who understands their own worth does not wake up every morning waiting for the world to confirm it. They continue moving forward whether others applaud them or ignore them. This quiet certainty becomes noticeable because it is rare in a world where many people constantly seek approval. People naturally respect individuals who are emotionally grounded. Such people do not panic when someone disagrees with them. They do not desperately chase acceptance from every group or alter their personality to fit every situation. They understand that being respected is far more valuable than being universally liked. While they remain kind and considerate, they are willing to stand by their beliefs even when doing so is unpopular. Emotional independence also transforms the way people handle rejection. Instead of viewing rejection as proof of personal failure, Emotionally mature individuals see it as information. They understand that not every opportunity, friendship, or relationship is meant to last forever. Sometimes people leave because their paths are different. Sometimes circumstances change. Sometimes expectations simply do not align. Instead of begging for another chance or trying to force connections that no longer work, they accept reality with dignity and continue investing in their own growth. This mindset creates an unusual kind of freedom. When your happiness no longer depends on controlling how others think or behave, you stop wasting energy on impossible tasks. You stop trying to convince everyone to understand you. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Your attention shifts toward the only person you can truly control, yourself. Emotionally independent people are not cold or distant. They form deep relationships and care sincerely about others. The difference is that they love from a place of abundance instead of desperation. They choose relationships because they add meaning to life, not because they fear being alone. Their kindness is genuine rather than transactional. They help others because it reflects their character, not because they expect constant appreciation in return. Boundaries play an important role in emotional independence. Many individuals confuse boundaries with selfishness, but healthy boundaries simply communicate self-respect. They define what behavior is acceptable and what is not. Someone with emotional independence is willing to say no when necessary, even if doing so disappoints others. They understand that constantly sacrificing their own well-being to gain approval eventually leads to resentment and emotional exhaustion. Another sign of emotional independence is the ability to remain composed during criticism. Criticism can be painful, especially when it comes from people we value. However, emotionally secure individuals evaluate criticism instead of automatically accepting or rejecting it. If it contains truth, they use it to improve. If it is unfair or malicious, they refuse to let it determine their self-image. Their confidence is strong enough to survive uncomfortable opinions because it rests on internal values rather than public approval. This quality also changes the dynamics of attraction and respect. People are naturally drawn to those who seem comfortable in their own company. Someone who enjoys their own life, pursues meaningful goals, develops valuable skills, and maintains inner peace becomes interesting without trying to impress anyone. Their independence creates an atmosphere of strength because they are not chasing attention. They are building a life that already has purpose. Emotional independence requires daily practice. It grows every time you choose discipline over impulse, purpose over validation, and self-respect over temporary approval. Every decision to protect your peace, honor your values, and invest in your own growth strengthens the foundation of your character. Over time, this inner stability becomes visible in your words, your actions, your relationships, and the way you carry yourself, creating a presence that naturally earns trust, admiration, and lasting respect. Walking away is often seen as surrender, but in many situations it is the highest expression of strength. It is not an act of defeat. It is a decision to protect your dignity, your peace of mind, and your self-respect. Most people believe power belongs to the one who holds on the longest, but true power often belongs to the one who knows when to let go. The ability to walk away from unhealthy situations, disrespectful behavior, and one-sided relationships requires emotional discipline that many people never develop. Human nature has a tendency to cling to what is familiar, even when it causes pain. People remain in toxic friendships because they fear loneliness. They stay in unhealthy relationships because they hope things will change. They tolerate disrespect because they believe patience will eventually earn appreciation. While perseverance is valuable in many areas of life, there is a difference between commitment and self-neglect. Continuing to invest in something that consistently damages your well-being is not strength. It is fear disguised as loyalty. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to walk away is emotional attachment. The mind focuses on memories instead of reality. It remembers the good moments, the promises, and the potential, while ignoring repeated patterns of disappointment. This selective thinking creates false hope. Instead of accepting what is happening in the present, people become attached to what they wish could happen in the future. Walking away requires accepting reality without allowing emotions to distort it. It means recognizing actions instead of believing empty words. Many people make impressive promises when they fear losing someone, but consistent behavior always reveals true intentions. Respect is demonstrated through actions, not repeated explanations. Someone who genuinely values you will not constantly force you to question your place in their life. There is also a psychological shift that occurs when a person demonstrates the willingness to leave. Individuals who desperately fear losing others often become easy to manipulate. They accept treatment they would never recommend to someone they love. They apologize for mistakes they never made, ignore broken boundaries, and continually lower their standards just to avoid being abandoned. In doing so, they unintentionally communicate that they are willing to sacrifice their self-respect for temporary acceptance. The willingness to walk away changes this dynamic completely. It sends a silent message that your values are more important than your fear. You are no longer negotiating your dignity for attention. You are choosing peace over emotional chaos. This quiet confidence often commands respect because it demonstrates that your life has purpose beyond gaining another person's approval. Walking away does not always involve ending relationships. Sometimes it means leaving unnecessary arguments. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every insult deserves your attention. Some conflicts exist only because both people continue feeding them with emotional reactions. Choosing not to participate is often far more powerful than trying to win. Emotional maturity recognizes that preserving inner peace is more valuable than proving a point. History repeatedly shows that strong leaders understand the importance of strategic withdrawal. They know that remaining in a losing position simply because they have already invested time or effort often leads to greater losses. This same principle applies to everyday life. Holding on to unhealthy situations because of the time already invested only increases future pain. Past investment should never become a reason to ignore present reality. Walking away also creates space for growth. Every unhealthy relationship consumes emotional energy that could be invested elsewhere. Constant stress, anxiety, and disappointment leave little room for creativity, ambition, or personal development. Once that burden is removed, many people rediscover parts of themselves they had forgotten. They reconnect with goals, passions, friendships, and opportunities that had been neglected while trying to save something that could not be repaired alone. Another powerful aspect of walking away is that it restores personal responsibility. Instead of trying to change another person's behavior, your focus returns to what you can actually control. You cannot force honesty, loyalty, respect, or love. You can only decide what behavior you are willing to accept in your own life. This realization eliminates countless hours spent chasing explanations from people who have already shown their priorities through consistent actions. Walking away is not motivated by anger or revenge. Decisions made purely from resentment often create more regret than peace. True strength is calm. It leaves without unnecessary drama, public arguments, or endless attempts to prove a point. It understands that silence can sometimes communicate self-respect more effectively than 1,000 emotional words. People who master the power of walking away do not become indifferent to others. They simply refuse to abandon themselves in order to keep someone else. They recognize that every meaningful relationship must be built on mutual respect, trust, and genuine effort from both sides. Whenever those foundations disappear, despite honest communication and sincere effort, they choose to move forward with dignity, carrying the confidence that protecting their self-worth will always lead to greater peace than remaining where respect no longer exists. The greatest mistake many people make is believing that attention creates value. In reality, value attracts attention. Countless individuals spend years trying to become more noticeable, hoping that if enough people recognize them, they will finally feel important. They chase approval, popularity, and constant validation, only to discover that attention without substance is temporary. Lasting respect is earned not by demanding to be seen, but by becoming someone whose presence naturally matters. Being available all the time often seems like kindness, loyalty, or generosity. While these qualities are admirable, they lose their impact when they come without balance. If you are always ready to answer every request, solve every problem, and sacrifice every priority for others, people eventually stop appreciating your effort. What was once considered generosity becomes an expectation. Instead of being respected, you become predictable, and predictability often leads to being taken for granted. Value begins with understanding that your time is one of your most valuable resources. Every hour you spend trying to gain someone's attention is an hour that cannot be invested in learning, growing, creating, or improving yourself. Highly respected individuals understand this principle. They protect their time because they recognize that every decision has an opportunity cost. They do not fill every moment with unnecessary distractions or relationships that drain their energy. Consider the difference between someone who spends every day seeking approval and someone who spends every day developing valuable skills. The first person depends on other people's opinions for confidence. The second builds confidence through competence. As months and years pass, their paths begin to separate dramatically. Skills create opportunities. Knowledge builds influence. Discipline earns trust. Personal growth becomes visible even without constant self-promotion. People naturally admire those who are committed to meaningful goals. When someone is focused on building a business, mastering a craft, improving their health, expanding their knowledge, or contributing something valuable to the world, they become more interesting because their identity is rooted in purpose. Their conversations become richer. Their decisions become clearer. Their confidence grows stronger because it comes from progress rather than praise. Being valuable also means developing strong character. Intelligence alone does not earn lasting respect, neither does talent or appearance. Character determines whether people trust you, rely on you, and enjoy your presence over time. Honesty, integrity, responsibility, patience, and consistency create a reputation that no amount of temporary popularity can replace. People may admire success, but they deeply respect character because it remains stable even when circumstances change. Another important aspect of becoming valuable is learning to say no. Many people fear disappointing others, so they agree to everything. They overcommit, exhaust themselves, and neglect their own priorities. Ironically, constantly saying yes often reduces respect because it signals that your own time has little value. People who establish healthy boundaries communicate that their commitments matter. Their yes carries weight because it is not given carelessly. Value is also reflected in emotional stability. A person who remains calm under pressure, keeps promises, handles criticism with maturity, and treats others with respect regardless of personal benefit becomes someone people naturally admire. Emotional consistency creates trust because others know what to expect. They feel safe relying on someone whose behavior is guided by principles rather than changing emotions. Many people mistakenly believe they must impress everyone they meet. This endless pursuit is exhausting because it depends on constantly adjusting to other people's expectations. Truly valuable individuals understand that they cannot please everyone, and they do not try to. They remain respectful, but they stay authentic. Their identity does not change simply because they enter a different room or face a different audience. This authenticity creates a quiet confidence that others immediately recognize. Personal growth is one of the strongest sources of lasting value. Every book you read, every skill you master, every challenge you overcome, and every disciplined habit you build increases your ability to contribute to the world. Unlike popularity, which can disappear overnight, personal development continues paying dividends throughout your life. It strengthens your confidence because your abilities become real rather than imagined. People also become valuable by solving problems instead of creating them. In every workplace, family, friendship, or community, those who bring solutions naturally stand out. They think clearly during difficult situations, offer practical ideas, remain dependable under pressure, and inspire confidence through their actions. Others seek their advice not because they demand attention, but because they consistently provide value. When your focus shifts from being noticed to becoming exceptional, your entire mindset changes. You stop chasing every opportunity for validation and begin investing in qualities that cannot be taken away. Your time becomes more intentional. Your standards become higher. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. Instead of asking why people fail to appreciate you, you ask how you can become wiser, more disciplined, more capable, and more trustworthy. As your value continues to grow through consistent action, meaningful purpose, unwavering integrity, and continuous self-improvement, attention, respect, and genuine admiration begin arriving naturally, because people are always drawn toward those who have built a life that reflects substance rather than constant availability.